2021 wrap up. So firstly, I wanted to show you, I finished knitting the blanket that I started for Knit and Listen in March. And I can't remember if I mentioned in it, but started out doing this oatmeal and this slate blue, which I love how these two colors look together. Then tragically, Joanne Fabrics stopped carrying this blue, and it is their like brand of yarn, so there's not going to be another store I could find it at. And so I kind of hemmed and hawed. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then I just realized, you know what, just pick a different shade of blue. I did 10 stripes in this, and then I did 10 stripes, and this cool, it's like a variegated blue, so there's different amounts dark that it will be. But I love how this has turned out. I still have not woven in the ends, but let's just, in all its glory. So here it is. Oh, it's so comfy, cozy. And Susan Branch would call this a nap blanket. So I'm declaring this to be a nap blanket. And even though it did not go how I anticipated it would with having the two different shades of blue, now I like it and I'm happy with it. And yes, it is very comfy, cozy, and I immediately started another chevron blanket because I was enjoying this so much. So yes, there we have it. This took 2 months of steady knitting. I have listened to so many audiobooks while knitting this, and happy to have it done. So one of these days, I will weave in the ends. April was a fun reading month. I did get through a fair amount, and I did spring clean my currently reading. So that is good. Not as quite as much as I was hoping, because I still have a big Wheel of Time book looming over me. But I'm still pretty happy. So firstly, I finished The Wrong Box by Robert Louis Stevenson. And overall, I'd say this is a 4-star experience. It's definitely not a 5-star because it felt a little bit too action-packed for me to get to sit back and enjoy it. But it was so funny and humorous, and the ending was awesome that it's solid 4 stars. So yes, it's in the 4-star zone, and I'm happy with that. And then also by Robert Louis Stevenson, I finished finally A Child's Garden of Verses. This is such a sweet, sweet little poetry collection. And I mean, look at these end papers, or they're not end papers. It was an illustration towards the end. How cute is this? So it's just all about kind of the magic of childhood, or if you're doing childhood right, you know, if you're imagining lots of things, that kind of magic of childhood. I loved this. I really enjoyed it. Then I was able to finally finish, and this has been loitering on my TBR for 2 years. I finished the Virago book of Victorian ghost stories. I have this bookmarked for a project I want to do later on, not because I haven't finished this. This was, there were definitely some stories in there that were kind of dull and that I skim read, but there were a lot of stories in here that I really enjoyed, and it makes me want to get another Victorian ghost story collection, but in a little bit. I am annoyed it took me 2 years to read this, so I want to take a break before I start a whole other ghost story collection. But the Victorians just, they were really good at it. And I think it really came into its own, you know, ghost stories. And I'm sure they existed before that. There's always been this fascination with the afterlife interacting with this life. And it's, yes, so very interesting. And I am pleased that I read it. Then I finally finished A Mind to Murder by P.D. James. She writes really excellent, solid mysteries. There are no characters in here that I'm like, oh, I miss Adam Dalgleish so much, you know? And then the other characters just don't really stand out to me. There's none that I'm like, I can't wait to get back with that character, but they're just solid mysteries. They're pristine. So if you want a very well-crafted mystery, I think Agatha Christie fans, if you like the puzzle of it, I think P.D. James is maybe a good modern day author to try out. And then I read this little gem of a book called Walking Across Egypt. This is by Clyde Edgerton. He's a Southern author I've been meaning to try for years, and this was a fabulous book. I ended up giving it 5 stars. It is a really short, sweet book. I don't think it's even 300 pages, and is about this older woman, Maddie, who is 87 years old. And she's really, in a like quiet season of her life. She raised 2 kids and she was a stay-at-home wife. So she did all the cooking and cleaning for her husband. And now she is a widow and her children don't live with her anymore. And she is enjoying this quiet time of life. At the same time, she has this handyman who she interacts with, and she sees, because he accidentally leaves a letter there from his nephew who is in juvenile detention, asking him, please, can I come stay with you? If I have a responsible person, I'll be able to come stay with you. And his name is Wesley, and she starts asking this guy about Wesley and decides to visit Wesley while he's in the juvenile detention center, and just starts pouring love into this kid who I think he's 18, and you can't kind of make heads or tails of, was he framed for stealing a car or did he actually steal a car? And he basically eventually just breaks out because he's so, he just feels so trapped and like his life is not going to amount to anything. And he goes to stay with her and he tells her he got leave. So she kind of is a little bit oblivious and lets him stay with her. And then there's all of this whole kerfuffle because he is, they figure out that he broke out and, he needs to come back. But it's a really sweet book about this intergenerational friendship. I did the audiobook of this and I highly recommend it. And I want to read so much more by Clyde Edgerton now. I just really I want to read more Southern writing. It's just kind of what I'm in the mood for. And it also just makes me very nostalgic for being back in Mississippi, where I grew up. And it does have some harsh language in there, but the language, is primarily from Wesley. And that's like a kid who's 18 and is in juvenile detention would talk this way. So if that is something that, might bother you, I kind of was not bothered by it because of the context that it was in. There is one scene, I think it's one scene with racial slurs. So also, you should know that going in if that's something that would be troubling. And it is troubling to me, but for the way it was done in the book, it felt fitting, unfortunately, with kind of the dynamic that there are with certain characters. It doesn't portray it as a positive thing. But I thought I should say that, just without I don't want to recommend this without kind of giving people a heads up about those elements of it. But other than that, I really, really enjoyed it. And then I read for my TBR stack, Delta Wedding by Eudora Welty. I finally read a Eudora Welty book. So when I do my TBR stack wrap up video, I will give my thoughts on Delta Wedding. And then another sweet romance that I read was Georgana's Secret by, it will come to me, Arlem Hawks. That's her name. So yes, I read Georgana's Secret, and this was just, I'm loving getting to know more sweet romance authors. And this will give you, if you are craving something that feels like persuasion, like you are on the sea, vast majority of this book. And you're following Georgana, or George, as her father liked to call her, when she, this is the very beginning of the book, so I'm not giving like anything that happens on later in the book away. I'm just telling you the setup for it. And her father feels that she is not safe on land with the situation that she was in. And so she is staying on board being disguised as a boy, George, and no one else except her father knows that she is in fact Georgana. And then she meets a handsome captain, and that is all I'll say. I highly recommend this. So if you just have not found, like, contemporary romances are not your style, steamy romances are not your style, but you really want some good romances out there, I think that maybe sweet romance would be a good avenue for you to try out. I'm over the moon about knowing about this genre. It's everything that I needed, and I didn't even know that I needed it. So yes, Georgana's Secret, highly recommend. Then I read the 12th in the Maisie Dobbs series, Journey to Munich. This one was stressful because it is right before World War II, and she goes to Munich on a mission. And Munich was not a nice place to be then. She has to pose as someone's daughter because they have required that this person who is in a Nazi prison be picked up by a family member. So she's posing as his daughter, so he doesn't have to stay there. And then is given another job while she's also there. She's also processing a lot of big, heavy things that have happened in her personal life. And it's Maisie Dobbs. I love the series. I can't wait to continue. And eventually I will catch up and then just have to wait for a new release. So I'm just not thinking about that. Then I finally finished Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend. There were some elements with virtue signaling that really hit me the wrong way. It just felt incredibly preachy, and there were some elements that really bothered me. But that being said, at the end of the day, I really enjoyed it. I was glad that I picked back up with it, and some very interesting elements that happened in it that I am really intrigued to see in the fourth book what is going to happen. And we do still have several books ahead of us. So it's exciting to know that, this is very much not the end of the series. And I'm looking forward to continuing on. And I really do love the world that it is set in. There's a lot of whimsy. She stays in this hotel that has these changing rooms, and her bedroom itself can look different every day. And just a lot of whimsy in it. And I really love that about this world. Then I also finished The War I Finally Won by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. I was very happy I switched from the audiobook to a physical copy because it was just one character's voice that the narrator was doing that just drove me nuts. And then I would have done the book a disservice to just DNF it then. Now I'm really pleased I picked up the physical book, and it did have some heavy, heavy things to deal with in it. Like, how do you grieve a neglectful parent? I think it's harder to grieve a neglectful parent than it is to grieve a loving parent. You just feel your emotions are so much more complex. So overall, I'd say I think I enjoyed The War That Saved My Life just because it felt slightly more lighthearted and just easy to read. But this one was excellent in and of itself. And then, cozy mystery alert for those of you out there. And I talked about this a lot on social media. The Tale of Hilltop Farm by Susan Wittig Albert. And I am just so enamored of this series. So it is a Beatrix Potter cozy mystery series. I'm pretty sure the first place I heard about it was from Natalie at Curious Reader. And I can't remember what jogged my memory to pick it up again. But I found out the audiobooks are in Hoopla, and we all know what a sucker I am for an audiobook. And lately I've been knitting so much. So to knit while I listen to an audiobook is kind of my ideal kind of evening. And this just had so much charm. It has talking animals. If I had known going in that it had talking animals, would I have been as interested? No. I'm glad that I didn't know that because she pulls it off. It's all in the execution, right? You can have a synopsis that just sounds so ridiculous, but if they carry it out well, you don't care. And also there's a cat named Crumpet. So you're following Beatrix Potter right as she has moved to the Lake District. And there is someone in the town who their death, was it accidental? Was it a murder? You don't know. And I really hope at some point, like the BBC makes this into a cozy mystery series. So yes, I could not handle how cozy it was. Sadly, there are only 8 books in the series, so I will run out rather quickly, but I just want to enjoy it. And then you can always reread when you run out, right? Then I read aloud with Peter the first in the Wingfeather Saga. I was so excited to start this. On the edge of the dark sea of darkness, you're following the Igby family, and they live in this cozy little town of Glipwood. And there are these really tyrannical creatures called the Fangs, and they rule this town. And then there's a whole set of events where the Fangs are, they do some things the Fangs aren't very pleased with. And so they're kind of trying to stay safe. There is an adorable bookshop called Books and Crannies, and it has some lovely illustrations in it. Let's see if I can show you. Oh, here's one from Books and Crannies. So I will talk in detail about this book with Peter when we do our next Kidlit book club, and I think it will be after we finish this series. We'll just wrap up the series as a whole, so that will take us several months. We're very much enjoying this, and Andrew Peterson, the author, I'm so glad to know about him. He is just a really cool Christian creator who's making very thoughtful art out there, and putting out intelligent literature. And he has a book called God in the Garden. I'm getting the title wrong, but that's coming out this fall. So I'm just very excited to know about his art and his music. And yeah, he's just creating so much. Then let's see. I finished Two on a Tower by Thomas Hardy. That was Loitering from Victober for the Star-Crossed Stitchers project I hosted with Natalie from Curious Reader. And good gracious, like, you know how some people, the drama that is in Wuthering Heights, they just can't handle it. It's like so over the top and just like, why? Why is this so dramatic? That's exactly how I felt about Two on a Tower. Thomas Hardy and I, we're not doing so hot lately. Between Jude the Obscure and this, I'm just eye rolling at him. There's some books by him that I genuinely like, but I'm just kind of like, I don't think I would have liked you if I had known you in person. You just kind of seem like a drama queen. And I'm like, suck it up, Cupcake. Like, it just, he's getting on my nerves. So, taking a break before I pick up another Hardy later in the year. Then I finished, finally, I just have the Dust Jacket. I don't know. The 7th Harry Potter book, and I was avoiding this because I just knew I was going to cry and cry and cry. And cry and cry and cry I did. I just, my life is going to be a perpetual loop of rereading the Harry Potter series. So, Jessica, if you are watching, we will be starting a reread of the series together. Maybe the end of May. We're just going to play it by ear. I'll miss those characters too much. So, it was emotional. I cried a lot. Now it's done. Then I did a buddy read of Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster. This was on my light academia, like, want to read list. And I loved this book. It did drag a little bit in the middle for me, but overall, I very much enjoyed it. It is a diary of a girl who is away at college, and an anonymous donor has sponsored her to go to college. And so you're getting to follow her at college. She has such a fun personality, and it's just, she to me is up there now with Betsy Ray and Anne Shirley. Just such a spirit about her, and such, I don't know, she's just really, what's the word? Spunky, I guess. Just lovely on the page and lovely to read about. So I'm very excited about the next one, which is called Dear Enemy, which I'm buddy reading it with Megan Hannett, and then my friend Katie and my friend Claire, and I am behind. I think they have both finished Dear Enemy, so I need to read it, but I have trouble binging series. So yes, very fun setup for a book, and lots of just light academia fun. Just really savoring all those little delights in life, and talking about books that you're reading, and yeah, just vigorous enjoyment of life, and I loved it. Okay, then I finished my 3rd time read of Middlemarch by George Eliot. This I read with Adam from Memento Mori and Kate from the novel Nomad. We are this year reading a classic together every other month. And good gracious, is this a masterpiece? This, I find, the more I read George Eliot, the more heavily her books weigh on me. So there is a real ache to kind of all of her books, because there was just an ache to her life. She did not have a terribly happy life for a lot of her life. And this book is just kind of people's expectations of what they think their life will be like, and then all of those expectations just being smashed to bits. So it is really sad in places, but the character of Mary Garth, I've decided, is my favorite over Dorothea. I want someone to write a fan fiction just about Mary Garth. I would read it in a heartbeat. But there is a romantic scene towards the end of this when it is raining, and it is one of the most romantic scenes I have ever read, and I had forgotten how romantic it was, and it just totally swept me off my feet. So many fascinating, complex characters, and also characters that I kind of like. Casaubon, I wrote him off the first time I read this, and now the 3rd time I'm like, you are so interesting and complex. I want to think about you a lot. I do not understand you or your motivations. Yes. George Eliot, I mean, I love her. Okay, then a book that I DNF'd years ago. I had forgotten that I DNF'd, and then picked it up again and loved it. I gave it 5 stars, was The Two Princesses of Bamarre by Gail, Carson, Levine. And this, I don't know why I DNF'd it a couple years ago. I love this from the very beginning to the very end. And it's really, really sweet in this to see this love and devotion these two sisters have for each other and the lengths that they are willing to go because of their love and devotion for one another. And it had so many magical elements. It had a quest, and I love quests and watching people travel. And it had these, magical beings, and it had some handicraft in it, which I love. And I think I liked it as much as Ella Enchanted, honestly. I really, really liked it. I honestly feel instantly like rereading it. It was that good. So I want to branch out with more of these books from Gail Carson Levine and Shannon Hale. So thank you to Taylor from The Babbling Bee for talking up The Two Princesses of Bamarre, because now I'm so happy that I read it. And then I read Out to Canaan by Jan Karon. This is for the A Year in Mitford project that I'm hosting with Chelsea from The Voyage of a Time Wanderer, Rainey from Rainy Day Reads, and Angie from Literary Labors. We're loving this project so much. We just gush about these books each time, and I love it's going the whole year. I'm so happy I picked this because I'm really in the mood for it. It's just everything is just perfect for reading Mitford this year. And then lastly, thank you to Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space and my subscriber Elizabeth for recommending to me again the Melendi Quartet series on audiobook. I read the first one, The Saturdays, and it was a 5-star reading experience. I read this years ago, and for some reason it just didn't take. I think I wasn't on Goodreads at the time. I think I would have given it around 3 stars. Something about it just struck me. It was just what I was in the mood for. Very cozy for audiobook. The Melendi family is so charming, and I love their personalities, and their father is a widower. And so then I love that the author has incorporated this really charming housekeeper who's kind of like this mother figure to them. Yes, so much to love about this series, and I'm so excited to continue on with the rest of the audiobooks in the series and be charmed by it. So those are the books that I read in April. I hope that you enjoyed this wrap up. Let me know if you have read any of them or you want to read any of them, and I'll be back for another video soon. Bye.